All right. Welcome to the Real Intermediate Podcast,
Number 2.
episode number 2. So, what are we going to be talking about today, Laura?
Yeah, so I thought it was really important, right? We talked about our values last time around, kind of like a quick intro to the podcast, but I think it's super important to talk about where did this journey begin for us and getting a lot more detailed into who we are as people, but what changed in even the last 3 years, I think, for us in our mindset, our attitude, the things that we do that kind of have started propelling and snowballing into this bigger thing. So I thought we might be good for us to take it back to the beginning.
Back in 1994?
A little bit. I mean, it's worth talking about, but I think for the sake of today, let's dive back 5 years ago, Esteban. I was lucky enough to have known you in college. That's where we were. Wait, no. How long ago were we in college?
2017. No, 17.
16.
The beginning of 17 is when we got out.
Yeah, so it's like over 5 years ago.
Damn.
Okay, so think back to college, Esteban. Think back to Esteban recently graduated. Who were you then?
Okay, I feel like with college, just to give more context, we were going to UC Davis,
Yeah.
and my entire life.
Go Aggies.
Okay, go Aggies.
I love it there.
My entire life, I was grooming myself and telling myself that I had to graduate and be the first college educated person in my family. My dad went to university for a bit, but it didn't really pan out for him, and my mom just never went. But I was determined, and a lot of it came from them just telling me, like, this is something that you have to do. Like, this is going to set you up down the road for bigger and better things. So for the longest time, that was my life mission, and I focused as hard as I could in school, and I sucked at it, I feel, to a certain extent. Okay, so
I give him a look because I disagree. I think Esteban was one of the most disciplined people I have ever met in my life. And I remember being so impressed by, like, you just had a crazy good work ethic. And I was just, like, not there.
it was all an act to get you to
okay.
fall in love with me.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
No, well, okay, rewinding a bit more, I feel like high school, middle school, elementary school, I saw that as a breeze. Like, just to give more context, I had straight A's until I got to college.
Yeah.
And college was what really humbled me because the lack of structure ended up messing with my entire process of expecting school was going to be a breeze. And that was the first time I got my first C, my first D. And luckily, soon after that, I turned it back around and it was like A's, B's, and C's still with the hard classes. Physics, I hate you. I'm never going to take you again. But yeah, once my mission was complete, meaning I finished university, I felt like I accomplished what my parents wanted me to do. And I felt so proud that I was able to get a good engineering job right after school. And I was able to move to San Diego too. So it was smooth sailing, or so I thought. I feel like things didn't last too long in that state of mind for me.
Yeah.
But from there, I pretty soon after being at this company for a year and a half, got laid off. Well, they closed the company and they gave us the option to move to different places. But what happened was the day I got laid off was the day after you got your full-time job that you really, really wanted.
Yeah. And I want to take a moment right there because it took me a long time to understand why that moment, like, okay, to take it a step back, like, I never had a doubt in my mind that you would get another job. I was like, is someone smart? He's like hardworking. Like his coworkers love him. He's gonna get a job super easy. At that same time, I had been struggling, like outside of college, to really like find my groove and find a job that I loved, and everything that I thought that I would do was just like not panning out for me. But like I remember it wasn't until recently that you were like, yeah, well, like getting laid off like shook my confidence. I was like, you didn't get laid off. Like the the office shut down. You had no control over that. You know, it's not like you got fired for doing something bad or like underperformance. It's like they're like, we're just gonna close this location. But I never really understood that that shook up your confidence so much because it was everything that you had worked for. Like you said it right now, like that was your life mission. And when that stability kind of take gets taken out from under you, like that's going to shake you up no matter what.
Yeah. So, what was Lauda like 5 years ago? Oh, you
Yeah.
just graduated from UC Davis.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, I think it's important to take it a little bit further back, but same like a seven, like elementary, like middle school, high school, pretty much a breeze for me. I remember like just sandbagging it, like my senior year. Like I could do my homework in the previous class, ace my tests, like besides math or some stuff, like it wasn't really difficult for me. I was like similar to you, like straight A student. Like I did my shit. I played sports. People copied off my homework, and like it was good. But I remember going to college and not knowing what I wanted my major to be. Like that felt like such a tough question. I always knew I wanted to do something important, and I just didn't know what I wanted that to be. So I remember I chose civil engineering. Like I had done an internship in high school around that, and I was like, yeah, I guess this is it. And the biggest thing on my mind was stability. Like was being able to provide for my parents, being able to be that stable kid that could like it sounds really weird, but like ROI, like return on investment for my parents. That's what I was concerned about. And not so much like what would make me happy. And the crazy part is, my parents didn't put as much pressure on me to choose something that was high paying. My dad always said, choose something you love, whatever you choose at, you'll be good at. Like, I believe in you. They were more worried about the stress that I put on myself, like my entire childhood, that they were just like, choose something and just, it's going to be okay. Um, yeah, but I guess that's who I was.
My parents were the complete
I
opposite.
know.
they,
Yeah.
they said be a lawyer, an engineer, or a doctor, or something that pays the bills.
Mm-hmm.
I think my dad comes from a very what would be the best way? He wants security in me and all my siblings' lives. So he always wanted us to push for the things that would produce. So he saw college, and to an extent it pushed it onto us and to me in particular that you need to get a good return on your investment when you're in college. And to me, I knew I didn't want to stay in school long enough to get a doctor's degree, or well, I don't know what type of degree, but I didn't want to stay in school super long, and I figured just some type of engineering, whether it's software or hardware or whatever,
Yeah.
would be the best way out.
Yeah. And kind of going back to that, I think now I know this, but if you're not passionate about something, if you're not like fully bought into it, it's going to show. And for me, I like absolutely hated engineering. I hated being a woman in a lab with men who didn't want to sit next to me because, like, what does she know? I had a complete lack of confidence in my abilities. Like, I remember my first couple of classes, I was like, this is so hard. Like, I don't understand. And it's because I got used to coasting. I had to put a minimal amount of effort when I was in high school and middle school. And I felt like I also had more discipline when I went to college. I moved 9 hours away. I had more freedom than I'd ever had. And I think I don't know if messed with me is the right word, but it was like different. You know, I wanted to have fun and meet people and explore, and so I felt like my mindset wasn't in the right place. I was more worried about having fun than about pursuing.
I think that's where I struggle with
Yeah.
just university in general. How do they expect you to know all these things as you're going through life changes and trying to make a decision? You were, what, 17, 18, 19?
Yeah.
But I feel like I didn't know a thing back then. Yeah, there's no way I would have been able to choose a long-term decision that alters my life and stick to it back then.
But yet we do it. And I think it's so tough. And I think that's why like later on in life people end up switching careers or they have a midlife crisis because you made this one decision that impacted years of your life to come down the road, and that's a lot of pressure to put on someone. And you know what's interesting is I had a lot of internal pressure to be that kid for my parents that was like going to provide for them. You had a lot of external and internal pressure to to again like fit within a certain career and then have that pay off. So, fast forward a little bit, I think graduating out of college, it was a really tough time. I ended up switching my major like really late on, like 3 years in. I was like, no, I'm not going to be happy with it.
What'd you start with and what'd you end with?
Okay, well, it's very similar. I was going to do civil engineering, environmental specifically, and I did like 2.5, 3 years worth maybe. And then I ended up switching to environmental science and management, which I loved. It was like policy and law. And I really wanted to be a lawyer, or I wanted to go into like the study of disease. I was like, I've always been told you continue on your education. And so I'm going to get my master's and I'm going to get my PhD and I'm going to just, you know, be that 1% of Latina females who gets this, or don't quote me on the stat, but I wanted to be within that group. So I ended up with a related but different major, not engineering. And to this day, I think I've told you, like, I felt like a failure for quitting on that. And I still, to this day, sometimes toy with, of like, could I have done it? If I would have had better discipline, if I wouldn't have let people's words get to me, if I would have just dedicated more time, could I have done it? And I think the answer is yes. But
But
do I think I would be doing it today? Do I think I would be happy with it?
yeah,
No, I don't think so. So, all in all, like your path ends up leading you to where you need to be. But I struggled a lot out of college. Like you got your full-time job. I also ended up moving down here to San Diego because like my family was here and why not? But it was really hard for me to find a job. I was doing like retail part-time and then like a research assistant for UC Davis part-time, and I was just like so lost and kind of, I would say, like depressed because I'd worked to graduate and then I had no idea what to do after. Like nothing, no clue.
so you were working part-time, multiple jobs, and
Yeah.
I do remember you being more sad back then. I remember asking you, like, hey, are you applying to jobs? Like, aren't you excited to, like, get to choose what you want to do? And you'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm working on an application. I'm like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
one application. If it were me, like, when I'm looking for something else or out of a job, I feel like I'm applying to, like, as many positions as I can just to see what sticks and see what fits. And I remember you just couldn't muster the courage or maybe
Well, I'll
just
tell you
the
what it
strength.
was.
Yeah.
It was anxiety. I was so fragile at that time that everything I had envisioned for my life and like, you know, like I would always get told like, Laura, you're our smart friend, or like a lot of very positive reinforcement on who I was. And I felt like a failure. I felt like a farce. And I remember that it was anxiety because if I put an application through and I finished it and then I got rejected, I was back at school. I was back to where I was before. But even more broken, even more fragile because then I'd gone through rejection. And I don't think I realized how much rejection at that point really hurt me. And that's to say, like, the mentality, right? Like, that was my mentality. I had anxiety. I think I was depressed. I just, like, could not take a step forward. That was it.
I also think that you're also hella cute and you never experienced rejection because you were so good looking. But um,
I don't think that's it.
uh, sorry for the comedic relief, but I feel like that was part of it too. Maybe you just didn't see much rejection in your life too.
Yeah. No, and that's true. I think a lot of my life, like, I just had this confidence of like things will work out because my dad was like that, you know? My dad was like, it's gonna work out. Like, you can do it. And so I think whenever I did have a goal or I did want something to happen, it happened for me. And there was that point in my life where I'm like, okay, well, I want a job. I want a career that I love. I want to be financially stable. And it wasn't happening for me, and I had to rebuild myself. Like I know that at that point I knew I was hardworking. The part-time stuff I was doing, like I was putting my all into it, but like it was putting my energy in something that wasn't gonna pay me back. And I remember I even considered like applying to a master's, and I was looking at going back to school, and
In
I'm
my head, I was like, hell no.
yeah, and maybe it would have worked out.
It could have.
I do think it could have. I could have found my passion, but now I think sometimes we use school or continued education, especially as Latinos, because we don't know what to do. We don't have someone to model on.
Do not go back to school if you're only doing it to have something to do. Because I feel like that leaves you in a
Yeah.
worse position, especially if you don't even know what your degree is going to get you in terms of a career down the road. There's so many people that will just go back to school and end up in even more debt, and they can't even find a job that they know or they would have wanted. A lot of people, I feel like even myself, I didn't know what working full time would be like after my degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tough. I like, again, I think if you're passionate about, and I will repeat this multiple times, I think if you're passionate about something, it will pay off. You'll make it work. Like, you need to love what you do, and then you will be success. Like success comes is a byproduct of that. So, like, I don't want to spend too much time on the should I continue education or not. We both did it. We both kind of went into full-time careers, and we have been. And would I go back to school? I love learning. So I think I've told you, like, my dream is like, if I had an unlimited budget, I would just pay people to teach me. Like, I would just read and learn, and that would be what I would want to do.
And I'm kind of in a similar boat where I will not ever turn down learning, but I think I will, at least at the time I'm saying this, I don't think I will ever go back to a university just because what they teach or what I've experienced is not anything related to what I will be doing in the real world. So, yeah, I think there's different ways to handle it, and university isn't the only solution for anyone thinking that.
Yeah. So I guess just to sum it up, like, who were you 5 years ago? If you could put some words to it, what was that Esteban with that version of you like?
Um, I think it would be clueless to a certain extent. I feel like I'm always clueless, but I was conflicted because now that I had this good job, and even after losing it, I knew I'd be fine. But knowing this isn't it, this can't be it for the rest of my life. I can't just be working the same job until I'm old and then retire. I feel like that sort of clicked things or got my gears turning and wondering what else should I be doing or what is the new goal that I can take in my life. that can replace what I just accomplished, which was the university and getting a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you feeling after school? Well, a few words to
Mm,
sum yourself up.
I think I was scared and paralyzed. I felt it's so weird saying that out loud because that's so different than like how I act today. But I was scared, I was paralyzed, I was confused. I think my confidence was very low. Like my whole life, I had had confidence in my abilities and my ability to persevere. And here I was, like, just feeling like nothing was working out. I'm pretty sure I was like kind of in like a victim mindset, just like finding excuses, like if I think about the way I thought about things. But, I definitely a lot of fear and a lot of confusion at that point. And what's crazy is like we're navigating this at the same time. And I don't think back then we had the words. Like we tried to help each other the best we could, but I don't think we had the words that we have today to like express ourselves so freely about those insecurities that
Yeah,
we
we
had.
couldn't vocalize as
Yeah.
well as we are today.